Uh, Hello, all. A very good evening to all the attendees. My name is Mandeep, and I'm your moderator for today. I welcome you all for this all important webinar on the care of extremely low birth weight infants and importance of warmth and humidification into it. Before I introduce you all to the panel of the experts, as we know that 12th May is celebrated as a Nurses' Day, I shall like to wish all the nurses Happy Nurses' Day as the nurses take the front rows in the battles against the epidemics like true warriors, and our respect goes out to you. We have today with us Dr. Jaikrishnan Mittal, Dr. Jyoti Patodia, Dr. Rohit Jain. I would like to introduce all three of them one by one. Dr. Jaikrishnan Mittal is an MD-DM, Chief Neonatologist and Director of Neoclinic Children Hospital, Jaipur. Dr. Jaikrishnan Mittal is the Director of Neonatology at Neoclinic, Jaipur. He received his Doctor of Medicine in Neonatology at PGIMAR, Chandigarh. Among other credentials, he is President of Jaipur Neonatal Federation and Secretary of Rajasthan State NNF. His publications include Longitudinal laryngeal saccular cyst leading to stridor in newborn, Think Beyond Lagonicoma, Journal of Clinical Neonatology, Association of Typhoid Fever with Anti-NMDAR, Amphilitis in Young Child, Journal of Neuroimmunology. Our second elite speaker is Dr. Jyoti Patodia, MD Fellowship Neonatology, Consultant Neonatologist, Neoclinic, Jaipur. Dr. Jyoti Patodia has 8 years of rich experience, including 5 years in neonatology. He has been involved in a lot of studies to improve neonatal care. Her quality improvement study on admission hypothermia has also been awarded as Best Oral Paper at IAPA Neocon 2019. She has more than 15 national international publications index journals to her credit. She is a national NRP trainer. She has also been a part of neonatal workshops as a faculty in North Zone Neocon, Rajput. Our third elite speaker will be Dr. Rohit Jain, MD Fellowship Neonatology, Consultant Neonatologist, again Neoclinic Children Hospital. Dr. Rohit Jain is a gold medalist in Fellowship in Neonatology from Neoclinic Jaipur. He is also a postgraduate in Pediatric Nutrition from Boston University School of Medicine. His papers on role of flow cytometry in diagnosis of early onset neonatologist sepsis and analysis of neutrophilic CD64 as a diagnostic marker of early onset neonatal septicemia have been awarded as the best oral papers in Raj Neocon 2015. The annual conference of Indian Academy of Pediatrics, Rajasthan chapter respectively. We will have the experts' opinion and their presentations, followed by a Q&A session, which you can share with us all your questions during the time of presentation. I welcome Dr. Mittal.
Good evening. Dear friends, as we emphasize, today is the World Neonatal or in fact Nurses Day, Nursing Day. We say that neonatal care is 99% nursing and 1%. So the importance of nursing care cannot be overemphasized. Looking at the current scenario in which they are tirelessly working for the humanity in the surface. Now, today's presentation or the webinar is regarding the thermoneutral care of a newborn baby. We would be focusing primarily on the care of extremely low birth weight babies in this presentation. We are going to have 3 presentations, 2 minutes each. I'll be discussing about the role or the importance of temperature regulation.
So sorry to disturb it. Hello.
Jyoti will be discussing.
Sir, can you take your mic little close? Can you take your mic little close?
He's talking. Can you please?
Sir, your mic, can you take it slightly closer? Sir, your mic, can you take it slightly closer? Oh, mic. Yeah, take it close to your lips.
So Dr. Jyoti will be discussing regarding incubator care, and then Dr. Rohit will be discussing regarding how to disinfect the incubator and take care of the incubators.
Also, you can talk without remove the earphones, sir. Don't use the earphones because your earphones is not very powerful. We are getting very low volume from your earphones.
You know that every year almost 15 million babies are born premature. The number is rising annually because of many reasons. Family increasing age of mother which is getting pregnant because of probably increasing number of in vitro fertilization. India has the highest number of preterm births per year, almost 3.5 million premature births per year. In fact, India is the capital of premature babies. Globally, prematurity is the leading cause of death in children under the age of 5 years. So it is one of the three leading causes of mortality in newborn.
And half of the babies born less than 32 weeks die due to lack of feasible, cost-effective care such as warmth, breastfeeding support, and basic care for infection and breathing difficulties. Lack of attention to thermoregulation continues to be a major cause of death in newborn population. Now, why premature babies are at higher risk for hypothermia? We know because of their peculiar physical factors. A premature baby is are born with less subcutaneous fat content, which is thermoprotective for any baby. They have less brown fat and thus have less capacity to generate heat by non-shivering thermogenesis. They have poor vasomotor control, so even if they are cold, their peripheries are vasodilated and thus they lose more and more heat. They have immature skin with minimal stratum corneum and thus their skin loses much of the water and heat. And generally a premature baby lies in an extended position which exposes larger surface area as against a term baby who sleeps in a flex posture and thus prevent heat loss primarily. In addition to their own physical factors, there are certain environmental factors which put the preterm baby at high risk for hypothermia. And the primary are low delivery room temperatures. Our delivery rooms are designed for mother and obstetrician's comfort, and the mean temperature of delivery room is maintained around 20 to 21 degrees centigrade. So assume or think that a baby who is born who was in a temperature of 37 degrees centigrade before birth is suddenly exposed to a temperature of 20 or 22 degree post delivery, and thus is a high risk to develop hypothermia. Now, how does a preterm baby loses heat during his newborn life? There are four major ways by which a baby loses heat. One is conduction. Conduction is when the objects are placed in contact with each other, which means when a baby is placed on the mattress and the mattress is cold and baby is warm, he will lose heat via conduction. If a baby is placed in contact with another cold surface, for example, an X-ray sheet or other surfaces areas, he will lose heat via conduction, and this amounts to approximately 10 to 15% of heat loss in premature or in newborn babies. The another is convection, which is heat loss due to movement of air at the skin surface, and that's primarily because of the position of baby's warmer. So if a baby's warmer is near to the gate or door of a delivery room or of an NICU, the movement of air in and out actually carries baby's heat along with it, and thus babies loses a lot of heat because of this. Radiation is basically transferring heat energy from exposed surface to the surrounding surface via radiation. So there is no direct contact between two surfaces, but they radiate the heat. And in term babies, almost 60% of the heat is lost via radiation. And fourth, and in fact, very important is evaporation, which is almost 60% in premature babies. So they lose water insensibly from skin surface and respiratory mucosa, and with the water loss, they lose the heat as well. The same four mechanism by which a newborn baby loses heat can be applied to give the heat to the baby also, or for the gaining of heat or warmth as well. And thus we can exploit the same four mechanism by providing heat to the baby via these surfaces. So the first example is regarding conduction. When a baby is coming in contact with a cold surface, he loses heat because he is warm, or baby is warm, and the surface is cold. The second is convection. So air draughts takes the heat away from the baby's surface as they passes through the baby. And the third is evaporation. Baby loses water, and in addition to water, baby loses heat as well. And fourth is radiation, which is a primary mechanism in mature baby or term baby. When they loses the heat and radiate the heat to the surrounding surface, to the cold walls, to the cold windows, and so on and so forth. So proven methods to prevent hypothermia as per Cochrane database are: one, raising ambient temperature. So raising ambient temperature first starts in the labor room. So you maintain the labor room temperature at around 27 to 28 degrees centigrade so that it doesn't lose the heat. The second and most important mechanism is skin to skin care, which is also known as kangaroo mother care. Kangaroo mother care can be should be utilized in every possible setting, and it is recommended that it is actually a boon in resource poor settings, in resource poor countries. So every baby after birth, even if the birth is via cesarean section, should be kept in direct skin to skin contact with the mother, and thus mother will provide the baby heat via conduction. It will also helps in early initiation of breastfeeding and in fact uterus evolution in the mother. So it has a lot more advantages. A premature baby needs some additional measure in addition to KMC and raising ambient temperature to maintain their temperature or to prevent excessive heat loss. And this can be provided by using food grade plastic wraps or bags immediately after birth. So immediately after birth, a baby can be slipped into a Ziploc bag or a food grade plastic bag. And then in fact resuscitation can be given after putting the baby in the food grade plastic bag. And then early care under warming devices such as radiant warmer, humidified incubators, and transport incubators are some of the advanced mechanisms to prevent the heat loss. So there are different mechanisms or different ways to prevent hypothermia, and every possible means should be used and applied to prevent hypothermia in a newborn baby. Now, focusing on incubator, the history goes back to early 19th century. In early 20th century. So the first incubator was developed by Tarnier, a French obstetrician, and the idea actually comes to Dr. Tarnier by looking at a baby chick incubator in a zoo. So the Dr. Tarnier thought that while incubator can be utilized to warm up the baby chicks or eggs, the same way a premature baby can be nurtured in an incubator. But it took a long time to be actually utilized into the actual practice. So that Dr. Martin Cooney used the first most modern technology of his age, that is incubator, to keep preemies alive. And in fact, it's an interesting story. Dr. Martin Cooney used to take the incubators with the babies in trade fairs just to show the people about the incubator and the market. And there was a ticket to see the babies in the incubator. It was a huge success until the scientific community came against it on the ethical grounds. Now, Dr. Cooney claimed an almost 85% success rate and saved almost 6,500 babies over the course of his career. And these are two photos. The smallest resident of the baby incubator of Cooney was a baby girl who weighed just 650 grams. And nurturing her is Hildegard Cooney, daughter of Dr. Cooney. The right picture is showing Dr. Martin Cooney with his daughter and assistant Hildegard holding a young boy as they look at a baby in an incubator at the New York World's Fair. And Dr. Cooney's daughter herself was as a premature baby who was nurtured in the incubator. So incubator means to lie on. It's basically a closed system specially designed for premature babies to create a micro environment to place prematures who are at high risk for maintenance of temperature as well as humidity. Now, what is the principle of incubator? As we have discussed, there are 4 ways to lose the heat, which are radiation, convection, conduction, and evaporation. Simultaneously, there are 4 ways to gain the heat as well. The radiant warmer utilizes radiation principle, and the incubator utilizes convection and evaporation or evaporation principle. So while in the radiant warmer, a radiant rod or a heat rod is above the baby and it gives the heat via radiation. In the incubator, there is a mattress on which baby lies and the heating unit is below the mattress. So there is one control unit. The air goes in, it is filtered and warmed via a warm fan or a radiant fan, a warm fan, and then it is humidified, and then there's an air curtain created or air current created around the baby through which baby gains heat, and then this air is flushed out. There is a thermostat in the system which maintains the baby's body temperature constantly as we desire it. So incubator actually leads to reduced convective heat loss by reducing exposure to air currents and providing a warm surrounding. Since it's a closed system, so there is low rate of air circulation. The radiant heat loss is also curtailed by hood and canopy of the baby on the baby of a double-walled incubator, so baby doesn't lose heat to a cold wall or a window nearby. And evaporation losses are minimized by maintaining high humidity in the incubator. So there are 3 ways of preventing heat loss and gaining heat in the incubator. The other advantage other than maintaining temperature is that the baby, this is a closed system, so noise level within the incubator is kept low. Baby is not disturbed. It helps in developmentally supportive care. It helps in maintaining the circadian rhythm of the baby. Light exposure is minimal, and this incubator can be covered with the clothes so that baby sleeps comfortably and maintain her circadian rhythm also. And most importantly, by keeping a baby in a closed system, our handling is minimal. So when a baby is in radiant warmer, he is touched frequently, and the chances of getting an infection is higher. While in closed system, when the handling is minimal, the infection is also less likely. Now, why incubators over warmers? One, they helps in maintaining a thermoneutral ambient temperature, so you can create a micro environment around the baby where the baby can be nurtured in a thermoneutral ambient temperature. It provides desired humidity, desired oxygenation. It is very good for observation of sick neonates, and babies who are infected can be isolated in them so that they are separated from the other babies' unfavorable external environment. The main functions of infant incubators are it helps in temperature control. It also can provide oxygen, so it can provide a oxygen-rich microenvironment if you want to give it via that. It helps in humidity control, maintaining fluid and electrolyte balance, which is a very tricky situation in a baby who is less than 1,000 grams and loses water excessively in first few days of life. The breathing gas is filtered and it protects the baby against infection, noise, light, and excessive handling. So the indication of incubators are for premature babies who are less than 34 weeks, less than 1,500 grams, to prevent heat and water loss. For babies who are less than 32 weeks, less than 1,250 grams, for humidification. For isolating an infected baby to achieve barrier nursing, and for transporting babies from from delivery room to NICU for investigations, a transport incubator can be utilized. In a hypothermic baby and in sick babies also, incubator helps in keeping them in a thermoneutral range of temperature. Now this is a incubator. There are various parts of incubator. I suppose Dr. Jyoti will be discussing the different parts of incubator in detail. Mainly, there is a mattress on which a baby lies. There are iris portholes to access the baby. There are tubing grommets for tube insertion. Then you have bassinet to keep the things of babies. Latch release, canopy, which is to protect the baby from external storage, external environment. And then bed height pedals, tubing arms, and then examination light. Few of the major concerns regarding incubator use is the concern of increased chances of infection. Now the major reason or major port of infection is actually the place where water is kept, which is water reservoir. Now to prevent that, how to prevent an infection in an incubator, Dr. Rohit is going to discuss, but we need to understand two very important parts of the incubator. One is filter. So we saw in the earlier slide that the air is sucked into the incubator, filtered and then warmed and humidified and given to the baby or kept in the incubator. Now this filter needs to be taken care of very importantly. So the filter should be cleaned before it is before a baby is kept into an ICU. And in fact, every time when you are putting a new baby, it is always wise to change this filter. Even when the baby is in the incubator, the filter should be cleaned on a daily basis. It protects harmful particles from entering the incubator and then protecting the infant's lungs as well. Water reservoir is for humidity. So this is water reservoir where water is kept, and this water is absorbed for humidifying the air. Now people have used acetic acid in a 1% solution to prevent infection, but we do not use anything to sterilize it. You just need to clean the water reservoir on a daily basis, and when a new baby is being kept into the incubator, the water reservoir should be sterilized via ETO or whatever method you have. Then you have control panel, which have a display unit, a water touch display unit, and then air boost system. Now, what are the temperature control modes in an incubator? There are two kind of temperature control modes in an incubator, like a reading warmer. One is air mode and another is servo mode. So air mode is when the desired temperature of air around the baby is set and the heater output is adjusted to attain it, which means you set an air temperature which is around the thermoneutral temperature for the baby as per the Hayes chart, and the baby maintains its own temperature based on the thermoneutral temperature area. The indication is when you are keeping the baby first time into the incubator or you are doing any kind of procedure, so you want to warm up the baby rapidly, and then air mode is important. While doing a procedure, when the incubator is opened up frequently or the baby is or the temperature probe is not applied on the baby, so you want to keep the baby on air mode. In a stable growing baby also, when we want the baby to take control over his or her own temperature, we want to switch the mode to air mode so that some amount of fluctuation is there just to prepare the baby for outside environment. The servo mode is when you the temperature probe or the skin probe is placed on the anterior abdominal wall and you set the baby's temperature, desired temperature as a set temperature, and the heater output is as per the set temperature. So if the baby's temperature is 36.5, heater output is to maintain that temperature as 36.5 degrees centigrade. Now we need to understand what is the normal newborn temperature. Normal newborn temperature is 36.5 to 37.5. Between 36 to 36.5 is cold stress, and less than 36 is moderate hypothermia, and less than 32 is severe hypothermia. the temperature between 36 to 36.5, though it's just cold stress, it should lead to a cause of concern. It could be because of hypoglycemia, hypoglycemia or sepsis. And even in healthy baby also, if a baby is nurtured on 36 to 36.5 degrees centigrade for a longer duration, it usually leads to poor weight gain and predisposes the baby for infections. The normal temperature is usually taken in the axillary area. If it is not available, flank temperature can also be placed. So the skin temperature probe placed on the right anterior abdominal wall. And generally the core temperature, which is the rectal temperature, is 0.5 degrees centigrade higher than the axillary temperature. Now what is thermoneutral zone? A thermoneutral zone is the range of environmental temperature where the body temperature is maintained in a normal range with minimal BMR or basal metabolic rate, which means the environmental temperature at which baby maintains its own temperature without extra effort. And there are charts for thermoneutral zone. It depends primarily on three things. One is the gestational age of the baby, second is the postnatal age of the baby, and third, whether the baby is clothed or not clothed. So baby who is premature, who is born immediately or in the first few days of life, needs a higher temperature to maintain their temperature or their body temperature, while baby who is a little bit mature or premature baby who is now advanced in the postnatal age needs a lower temperature to maintain their own body temperature with minimal BMR. So an environment in which the temperature of baby is maintained in neutral thermal zone is a thermoneutral environment, and Hayes charts are available. So as you can see, the thermoneutral temperature increases as the baby's age or weight decreases. So while in a baby who is 1000 to 1200 gram, you need 35 degrees centigrade on first day to maintain their temperature, while a baby who is more than 2500 gram, you just need 32.8 degrees centigrade to maintain their body temperature. In the same baby also, as the age advances, you need a lesser temperature to maintain their own temperature. So there are thermoneutral zones available, or charts are available to guide you regarding how to keep them or at what temperature they should be kept in the incubator. Now, while a baby comes into an ICU, we need to prepare the incubator on admission. We need to provide a heat gaining environment to stop any ongoing heat loss. And we need to minimize the evaporative loss by increasing humidity also, especially in new baby or new admission of ELBW baby. So you need to keep a higher humidity, a higher temperature, and minimize radiant loss by protecting incubator wall from excessive cooling. So that an ICU temperature should also be a little bit on warmish side, or 26 to 27 degrees centigrade. If a newborn baby, if a premature baby comes immediately, place the cold infant on air control unit with the set point as per the thermoneutral zone. And we have discussed that for premature infant, immediately when they come, the incubator should be pre-warmed to 36 to 37 degrees centigrade, and for a term baby, it should be kept at 33 to 34 degrees centigrade. When the infant's body temperature is normal, place the incubator into servo control mode and with a set temperature of 36.5 degrees centigrade. So immediately when the baby comes to an ICU, he should be served in air mode, and then it should be switched to servo mode. Measure the premature baby's axillary temperature immediately prior to transferring to an incubator and recheck 30 minutes after transfer. And if the baby's temperature increases beyond 37.4 degrees centigrade, then we need to reduce the air temperature 0.5 degrees centigrade every hour till the infant's temperature fall within the target range. And if it is below 36.5, then obviously we need to increase the temperature, incubator temperature, by 0.5 degrees centigrade. Now, what are the differences between radiant warmer versus incubator? A radiant warmer, as we know, is an open system, while incubator is a closed system. A radiant warmer have an overhead incubator heater with a reflector to focus radiant heat, while incubator has underdeck heater and fan to circulate warm filtered air. In a radiant warmer, you can easily access the baby, while in an incubator, baby is less approachable. There is increased insensible water loss in radiant warmer, approximately extra 20 ml per kg, while in an incubator, insensible water loss is less. And if you add humidification, it can be in fact reduced further and can be utilized to heat insensible water gain as well. Radiant warmer is a simple device. It is easy to clean and maintain as against incubator, which is somewhat difficult to clean and maintain. And radiant warmer, there is low risk of infection unless baby is excessively handled, obviously. While in incubator, the risk of infection increases if it is not adequately cleaned and disinfected. And there is a major difference in cost between radiant warmer and incubator because of their nature of working and functioning. Now the evidence says there is a Cochrane available regard comparing radiant warmer versus incubators for regulating body temperature in newborn infant, and it states that radiant warmer results in statistically significantly increased insensible water loss compared to incubators, and a trend toward increased oxygen consumption, which was not statistically significant. So there is one thing very clear, that radiant warmer leads to increased insensible water loss. There is somewhat increased oxygen consumption, and we need to take into account this insensible water loss when we calculate daily fluid requirement, especially in babies who are less than 1250 grams, because they lose excessive water via their skin. There are double-walled incubators these days available, and there is a comparison between double-walled and single-wall incubator. In a single-wall incubator, since the wall is in direct contact with the outside atmosphere, so the difference between baby's temperature, which is 36.5, vis-a-vis wall temperature, which is 30.5, is nearly 6 degrees centigrade. This actually leads to radiant loss from the baby. So the baby gains via convective heat but loses via radiant medium. While in a double wall incubator, since there is an air curtain between two walls, so under similar condition, inner wall is nearly 33.5, and thus the radiant heat loss decreases by nearly 50%. It has shown that double wall incubator have the advantage of decreasing heat loss, decreasing radiant loss when compared to single wall incubator, and there is also the advantage of reduced oxygen consumption. There is a minimal increase in conductive heat loss when compared to single wall incubator. However, there was no beneficial on the effect on the long-term outcomes. So the take-home message from this part of the presentation is that hypothermia is a significant independent cause of newborn mortality and morbidity, and for every 1 degree drop below their normal temperature at the time of admission, the mortality increases by 28%, irrespective of whatever is the cause of admission. And it increases the morbidity also, morbidities, related deaths also. So much so that the WHO and everybody prescribes that it is not ABC in newborn, it is in fact temperature, airway, breathing, circulation in newborn. So the temperature control is as and equally important as maintenance of airway, breathing and circulation in a newborn baby. Kangaroo mother care, plastic wraps, warm mattresses are some of the things which should be utilized extensively, and then warmer and incubators are various other modes to maintain normothermia. They should be used judiciously whenever they are required, especially in babies who are less than 1250 grams. And as we discussed, extremely low birth weight babies or babies who are less than 1000 grams require extra measures to prevent heat loss and insensible water loss. And in double walled incubator is a good measure to gain these things. Thank you. So I would now hand over to Dr. Jyoti for the next part of my this presentation. Dr. Jyoti, please. And I suppose we'll be having questions at the end of session.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible. You can go ahead.
Okay. So I will be talking about importance of humidification in the care of preterm babies in incubators. So before we go on to the details of humidification, let's discuss some of the very basic terminologies of humidity. As we all know, humidity is the quantity of water vapor present in air. There are two types of humidity, absolute humidity and relative humidity.
Not shared. Ma'am, your presentation is not shared.
Okay. Can you see now?
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Okay. So humidity is of two types, absolute and relative humidity. Absolute humidity is the measured amount of water vapor present in a gas mixture, which is usually expressed as milligram of water per liter of air. Whereas relative humidity, which is expressed as percentage, it is actually the amount of water vapor present in a certain volume of gas at a particular temperature upon the maximum carrying capacity of the gas at that particular temperature. So for example, if 1 liter of air has 30 milligram of water vapor and the maximum carrying capacity is 60 milligram of water vapor, so the absolute humidity would be 30 milligram of water vapor and relative humidity would be 30 divided by 60, that is 50%. Now this is important because in the next slides, whenever I will be talking about humidity in incubators, I would be referring to relative humidity. And normally air has 30 to 50% relative humidity. So this is a graph which is showing the temperature and the absolute humidity. So there is a relation between humidity and temperature. Whenever there is increase in air temperature, the capacity to carry water vapor increases. So relatively, the relative humidity would decrease. For example, here we can see when a baby is delivered in a delivery room, the temperature is 20 degrees Celsius, and at that time the humidity would be 50%. Now, when we shift this baby to an incubator, which is heated to 32 degrees Celsius, but we do not add any added humidity to it. So when we increase the temperature from 20 degrees Celsius to 32 degrees Celsius, without adding any added humidity, there is actually fall in relative humidity from 50% to 25%. So what I'm trying to say is we need to add humidity to the incubators, because if we do not add extra humidity, the relative humidity would further fall and this would lead to extra loss of water from the skin of the premature babies. So why humidification is required in preterm babies? As we all know, preterm babies less than 32 weeks, they have an underdeveloped epidermis and stratum corneum, which increases the risk of water loss through the skin, leading to temperature instability, dehydration, electrolyte imbalance, as well as heat and calorie loss. Increasing the humidity to the surrounding environment can prevent all these complications. Also, after birth, the skin of the preterm babies is exposed to the external environment, and by about 2 weeks after birth, regardless of the gestation, the neonate skin functions would function like that of a term baby. So in this graph, we can see the relation between a transepidermal water loss and gestation age and postnatal age. So more premature the baby, higher would be the transepidermal water loss. As we can see in this graph, that a 25-weeker would have a higher transepidermal loss as compared to a 38-weeker. Similarly, earlier is the postnatal days, higher would be the transepidermal water loss. And after around 14 days, the transepidermal loss reduces to minimum. Now in this graph, we can see the pattern of heat loss from the skin for preterm in the initial first week of birth. So if you see the orange line, which is showing the evaporative heat loss. Now this evaporative heat loss is again maximum with the decrease in gestation age. We can see in a 25-weeker, the evaporative heat loss is maximum, whereas with the increase in gestation age, this heat loss decreases. Now what happens when we add humidity to these babies? Initially, you can see when the humidity is only 20%, the evaporative heat loss is as high as 60. But clearly we can see as the relative humidity increases from 20 to 40 and 60%, the heat loss also gradually decreases. So this is clear that we need to add humidity to incubators for preterm care. And what are the various benefits? Most important is it decreases the transepidermal water loss. And because of this, there is improved fluid and electrolyte balance. We hypothesize that with decreased fluid requirement, there could be decrease in comorbidities like BPD, PDA, or IVH. Also, there is enhanced energy balance, there is improved thermoregulation, and there is enhanced skin integrity. But humidity does not only come with benefits, there can also be certain risks involved with humidity, and the most important risk that we are really fearful of is infection. So definitely infection is the biggest barrier in providing humidity in the incubators. And the most common organisms that are associated with sepsis in incubators are gram-negative sepsis, the most common being Pseudomonas aeruginosa, followed by E. coli sepsis and Candida albicans. So is infection really a problem with humidity? So initially, when we started with humidity, when the humidified incubators were introduced, infections were really a problem, as during that time there were no standard cleaning cycles, the humidity levels were uncontrolled, the method of humidity delivery was not standardized. But I think with time, with advancement in neonatology and with improvement in the quality of care in ELBW babies, I think we have been able to have some control over these infections if we are taking proper cleaning protocols. So this is a humidification chamber as shown in the picture, which is a water reservoir. And we can see that there is a maximum and a minimum line, and the water levels should usually be between this line. Normally, you can fill it with distilled water or sterile water, but in our unit, we usually fill it with sterile water. So this is easily visible, easily fillable. This can be easily removed. And the water temperature of this reservoir is usually maintained at 55 degrees centigrade, which is in itself antibacterial. How we will be cleaning and maintaining the asepsis of this humidification will be discussed by Dr. Rohit in the next presentation. So we've talked about humidification, we've talked about when we should use it, why we should use it, about its pros and cons. Now, what is the evidence for humidification? When we see the previous studies, the initial studies when the humidified incubators had just come, so the initial studies showed that when VLBW babies were compared with humidified incubators of 80 to 90% as compared with the dry incubators, that there were definitely increased chances of Pseudomonas sepsis. But I think with the later studies, this is one of the very remarkable studies which was published in 2010 in pediatrics. And this used the latest advanced humidified incubators. And this studied the ELBW babies in both humidified incubators as well as the conventional non-humidified incubators. And it was seen that the humidified incubators group had less fluid intake, insensible water loss, less maximum weight loss, lower incidence of hypernatremia during the first week, as well as they had higher growth velocity. Also, there was decreased incidence of severe BPD in these babies. However, unlike the other previous studies, here there was no difference in sepsis, NEC, IVH, or BPD. So with the recent studies, there is no further increase in sepsis rates when we are using humidified incubators. So this is one of the studies which is a survey of almost 26 NICUs in New Zealand, which studies the variability of incubator humidity practices in management of preterm babies. And it was observed that there is a wide practice variation in the gestational age parameters determining humidification use. There was a variation in the duration of use, there was a variation in the timing of initiation, and there was a variation of weaning practices. So the authors concluded that there is no any national or international standard guideline for the amount and duration of incubator humidity for the care of preterm babies. And this variation reflects the paucity of research in this area. This is one of the most recent systematic review in 2020. And I would like to quote some of the very remarkable studies which was done by Sung et al. And in this study, infants more than 26 weeks of gestation, 60% incubator humidity did not exhibit any increased sensible water loss when compared to those with 80% humidity. So here it was seen that a 26-week baby was also 60 to 70% incubator was also humidity was also sufficient. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible. You can go ahead.
Okay. So now coming to humidification and phototherapy. So what the evidence says is incubator humidity of 60 to 70% does not alter the phototherapy irradiance. But when the incubator humidity is more than 80%, there is decreased LED and halogen phototherapy irradiance by 10 to 45%. So what this has implications in our practical uses. If a baby is having jaundice and we are giving phototherapy in ELBW babies, and if it is on high incubator humidity, then we should decrease the humidity less than 80% so that it does not interfere with the phototherapy. Next, coming to humidification and KMC. So this is a common misbelief that we have observed even among the health workers, that if the baby is under humidification, then you cannot do KMC. So the evidence says that the benefit of skin-to-skin care outweighs the additional insensible water loss if a preterm infant exhibits when outside the humidified incubator. So removing the preterm baby from the humidified incubator for skin-to-skin care has been shown to be safe practice even during the first week of life itself. So we have seen that the use of humidification, it should be used in less than 32 weeks of post-conceptional age. Why less than 32 weeks? Because after 32 weeks, the skin is matured enough and you do not require humidity. For how long can we use it? We can use it usually up to 2 weeks of age, but in case of very extreme premature babies like 26 weekers, you can even use it up to 3 to 4 weeks of postnatal age. How much humidity should we use it? Most of the evidence says 70 to 80%, but again that depends on the gestational age. Sometimes in very premature babies like 26 or 24 weeker, we even start with humidity as high as 85 to 90%. But again, be cautious when you're using humidity more than 80%, as that is an added risk factor for sepsis. And how to wean, that I will be seeing in the next slides. So as we had seen that there is a variation in the humidity practices, as we do not have any standard guidelines. So with the available evidence, we have made this our unit protocol which we follow. So we divide our babies whether it is less than 28 weeks or more than 28 weeks. If the baby is less than 28 weeks, we usually commence humidity of, we usually start humidity at 80%. And we maintain this humidity at least for 7 days. After 7 days, then we gradually wean off the humidity by 5% daily. So from 80% we come to 75, 70, 65 until the humidity comes down to 40%. So after 40% we can discontinue the humidity. So usually by 14 to 21 days, we are able to discontinue humidity in a less than 28 weeker baby. But again, this is not very hard and fast. For example, if a baby is very, very premature, if it is 26 weeker, we might even need to start humidity at a slightly higher level like 85 to 90%. Again, when we are decreasing the humidity, we also need to take the clinical condition of the baby into consideration. For example, if you're decreasing from 75 to 70%, at the same time, you should make sure that the baby is not having excessive weight loss, the sodium levels are maintained, and the baby is not having hypothermia. If baby develops any of these things, then you would not decrease your humidity level and you need to maintain at that. Now, similarly, when the baby is more than 28 weeks, here we follow slightly different pattern. Here we can start with a slightly lower humidification, that is 70 to 75%, and we would prefer weaning humidity at a faster rate as compared to less than 28 weeks. So here we start humidity with 70 to 75%, and after 48 to 72 hours itself, we begin weaning with 5% each day. In contrast to the preterm babies, where at least we maintain the initial level for 7 days. Again, here we decrease by 5% each day and we discontinue the humidity by when it reaches 40%. So this is just a table just to show you how it happens. If the baby is less than 28 weeks, see, we have started the humidity on 80% and we continued it for 7 days, and then we gradually decrease it by 5% daily, and after 40%, which is almost day 14 of life, we have discontinued it. But for a more than 28 weeker, we can start at 80%, but we wean it gradually within 2 to 3 days, depending upon the clinical condition of the baby as well. And we have been able to discontinue humidity almost by 10 days. Now here we would also discuss what is the relation of temperature with the humidity. For example, if the baby is having hypothermia or hypothermia, how would we interpret it in terms of humidity? If the baby is having hypothermia, that is temperature less than 36.5, first of all, we need to ensure that the temperature probe is secured properly. You need to check the baby's axilla temperature to confirm the skin probe is correlating. Then you need to ensure that the bedding has not become damp or wet from condensation. And after that, we can increase the incubator temperature and recheck the axilla temperature in 30 minutes. At the same time, if there is hypothermia, you also need to rule out sepsis, as hypothermia could be just be the initial presentation of sepsis itself. After we have ruled out all these causes, only then we will consider increasing the humidity, because low humidity could also be one of the causes of hypothermia. So similarly, if the baby is having hyperthermia, that is temperature more than 37.5 degrees Celsius, first again we will ensure the temperature probe is secured properly. We will check the baby's axillary temperature to confirm whether it is correlating. Then we will decrease the incubator temperature and recheck the axillary temperature in 30 minutes. Again, you need to rule out infection, as fever or hyperthermia could be an initial presentation of infection. And after we have ruled out all these parameters, then you could consider decreasing your humidity if you feel the high temperature could be due to high humidity. So now we'll discuss about this incubator rain out. So you can see in this picture, often we have seen that when we nurse the babies in incubator and we are giving very high humidity levels, we've seen that the inner walls of the incubator, they become completely rained out. There is deposition of mist and there is condensation in the inner walls. So whenever we see this, you should remember that this is not acceptable. The rain out should not occur at all. So if it is occurring, the first thing you should do is you should wipe the condensate with a sterile cloth, because this itself can be a microenvironment. This itself can create an environment for the bacteria to grow. The next thing is you need to cover the incubator with a plastic sheet or a cloth, so that you can prevent the cooling of the walls of the incubator from the external environment. And this rain out usually occurs if there is a mismatch between the humidity and the incubator temperature. That means maybe you are giving very high humidity, so you need to decrease your humidity levels. So this is a table where you can just grossly see which is showing the relation between the incubator air temperature and the humidity. So here we can see that if the incubated air temperature is 38, the humidity levels should correspond to almost around 80%. This is not hard and fast, but it is somewhere around this. So if the temperature is 37, your humidity levels should be around 70%. If it is 36, your humidity level should be around 60%. So from this, you can see, for example, if your incubator air temperature is 35, and you can see that there is rain out occurring in the incubator, and the humidity level has been set to 70%. So this is a mismatch. At a 35 degrees Celsius temperature, you need to maintain humidity of 50 to 60. But if it is 70%, you need to decrease your humidity. So this is how you can guess what the humidity level could be as per the incubator temperature. So now coming to the weaning of an incubator to open cot. So there are different criteria of weaning, but what we follow at our unit is, first of all, the humidity should be stopped. Once the baby is off humidity, that is less than 40%, and the baby is maintaining skin temperature, that is 36.5, at an air temperature of around at least 30 to 32 degrees Celsius. That means the air temperature should not be more than 30 to 32 degrees Celsius for consecutive 3 days. And during this time, the baby should have normal electrolytes, he should be gaining weight, and the birth weight should also be regained. If the baby is fulfilling all these criteria, then we can clothe the baby and shift to the open cot. There are many other criteria that people follow. Often people even shift to the air mode before shifting to the open cot. And if the baby is maintaining temperature at air mode of 30 degrees for 2 to 3 days, then also you can shift the baby. Sometimes people also follow the weight criteria if the weight is greater than 1200 grams. However, this occurs when a premature baby is usually more than 2 to 3 weeks of age, and because this is the time when the skin is mature enough and you do not require any humidity or an incubator care. So the key message I would like to conclude by saying that the incubator humidity is a very common practice used worldwide in NICU for preterm care. However, there are variation in humidity practices due to the lack of standardized incubator humidity guidelines. But one thing is clear, that humidity is warranted for extreme preterm care, as it decreases the transepidermal water loss, it decreases hypernatremia, it decreases weight loss, it also decreases comorbidity like severe BPD, it gives better skin integrity, it improves thermoregulation, But again, remember, it does not come without risks such as sepsis. But I think with better cleaning protocols and aseptic protocols, we can control it. But we should be cautious about sepsis when we are using high humidity above 80%. Again, this area should be the focus of future research as well. Especially, there is no clear evidence that exists in comparing incubator humidity levels in less than 26-week baby. And also, there should be more evidence is needed to determine microbial growth in incubator humidity of more than 80%. So with this, I conclude my presentation. And I would like to invite Dr. Rohit for the next part of our webinar. And he will be talking on a very important topic, which is cleaning of the incubators and maintaining asepsis in babies while on incubators.
Good evening, everyone. After having an enriched discussion on the basics and principles of incubator humidity management and its importance, we'll now discuss on asepsis measures and nursing care in incubator. Sepsis is one of the most feared complications from a preemie in an incubator. It can be quite detrimental for the baby. And in fact, if we follow some basic principles and ensure good nursing care, it is largely preventable. So we'll first focus on the daily cleaning aspects. Whenever the equipment is in use and the baby is being nursed,
Can you make it in full screen, sir? Sorry to interrupt.
Can you make it full screen? Can you make it full screen? Presentation.
okay. Is it okay?
No, sir, it's not full screen. We are seeing the PPT layer, just the PowerPoint layout. Just move your cursor.
To press this.
So you can do one thing, unshare the slide and share it once again. You can stop sharing it and share once again.
Okay.
Select the first option, screen otherwise. Just press
Is it
escape,
okay?
sir. No, it's not yet
Is
come, sir. No, you have not yet shared. You are, I think so, you're directly into your presentation mode only.
Okay, I'll just do stop sharing and then.
Yeah, you have already stopped it. Just press escape button once.
Okay.
Okay, now can come back to blue jeans.
Yes.
Okay, on top that computer icon is there to share the screen.
Yes.
Click on that and then click on yeah, and make it full screen now. Go to slideshow. Yeah, from beginning. Yeah, perfect, sir.
Right.
You can go ahead.
So, sorry everyone for the technical issues. Uh,
Just single click on your slide and then use the arrow key of your keyboard to change the slide.
okay. So we'll first discuss the daily cleaning. Whenever the equipment is in use and the baby is being nursed in the incubator, all approachable internal and external surfaces should be cleaned daily with an antiseptic solution like glutaraldehyde. It can also be done using tissue papers wet with mild soap and water. Always avoid spirit or organic solvents that must not be used to clean the incubator hood or panel. It will make the incubator panels hazy. Ensure that every morning the sheets are being changed. The cushion should be cleaned quickly with soap and water solution and dried with tissue paper. Enroll two nurses who should together do the morning cleaning part and handle the baby carefully.
Sir, you are still on the first slide. Have you changed the slide?
Yes.
No, we can see the first slide. Single click on the slide, sir. Single click on the slide on the full screen mode. Na? Single click. Yeah, now it's working. Yeah, yeah, it was working.
Okay.
Change one slide. Yeah, it's working now. Yeah, working fine.
Okay. So, one of the most important aspects of entry of sepsis is the humidification chamber. It should be emptied and cleaned daily with soap and water. Use only and only sterile water for filling the chamber, no tap water. In fact, we can all make it a daily habit that whenever we examine the baby, check his vitals, check his physical examination, we ensure that the nursing staff who is attending the baby has changed the water early in the morning. As Sir said, some people have used 1 to 2 ml of glacial acetic acid or vinegar that can be added in the water in humidifier to prevent bacterial growth. Are the slides turning? Are the slides turning?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please go ahead,
Yes.
sir.
Okay, now we'll discuss the disinfection or deep cleaning protocol. Now, whenever in use, incubator should be cleaned thoroughly every 7 days if you're using it a high humidity of more than 75%, or every 2 weekly if the humidity is less than 75%. In this case, you need to shift the baby to another clean incubator or temporarily in a radiant warmer with a cling wrap. Even when the incubator is not in use, then it needs deep cleaning every 2 weekly. Allow the device to cool for 30 minutes prior to disinfecting. Move the device to a work area where you have adequate space to completely disassemble parts. PPE should be worn as per clinical protocol. Make a good team of trained personals from the housekeeping and nursing department that should know how to dismantle all the layers of the bed. After dismantling all the layers, each part is being cleaned with mop soaked with soap and water. Avoid water over any electrical wiring part or sensors. The parts are being then dried with mops and wipes. Some parts should be soaked in appropriate solution like tubing management grommets, porthole grommets. Remember, for reusable skin temperature probes, use only a soft cloth to apply solution. Never submerge them or coil tightly for storage. After you have done this step, the parts are being sterilized using a vaporizing agent or fumigation. It can be done by 0.5% sodium hypochlorite solution. Glutaraldehyde is another good alternative. Glass surfaces should only be cleaned with soap and water or minutant spray. A simple way of doing fumigation is to add 50 ml of formalin to 50 ml of distilled water in humidity tank and plugging it for 4 hours. It leads to fumigation of the incubator. After you have completed all these steps, the incubator should be allowed to air dry for at least 30 to 45 minutes before next use. Do not forget to mention the date of cleaning and it should be labeled on the incubator. The incubator blanket should be sent in the laundry every 7 days and in between patient change. Humidification chamber should be autoclaved or sent to ETO weekly. An important aspect of incubator is the filter. If it is clogged, it reduces the oxygen entry and promotes CO2 buildup in the incubator. And if it is infected, then it drastically increases the risk of sepsis. So, some people change filter quarterly or when used with an infectious patient or when it is visibly dirty. However, in our unit, we found a slight surge in sepsis rates and we retrospected our policies. Then we decided to change the filter for every new patient and on change of incubator. So this is the incubator. Behind the humidification chamber lies the screw under which there is a filter. It should be examined on every deep cleaning time. Ongoing maintenance is the key to increase the mean time between failures. The hospital biomedical engineer must regularly check equipment, but the authorized company engineer must be called for preventive checks and major breakdowns. The control and power units should be calibrated every 4 to 6 monthly, and thorough servicing should be done annually. Similarly, the temperature calibration should ensure sensitivity to 0.5% of the set value. So, whenever the babies are about to arrive, you should inform the nursing staff well in advance so that they can make the necessary arrangement. First, it should be pre-warmed to a temperature appropriate to an infant's age, size, and condition, as discussed by previous presentations, and to be kept in air mode initially. Position the incubator away from draught and direct sunlight. Do not place the incubator parallel to the wall because it hampers air circulation. The infant should be placed directly on the linen covered mattresses and surrounded by boundaries or nesting. Temperature probe placement needs special mention. Whenever you prepare the skin, you can prepare the skin using an alcohol or spirit swab. However, if the baby is extreme preemie or the skin is very fragile, you can mix equal amount of alcohol based hand rub and equal amount of distilled water or sterile water, and then you clean it with the help of a gauze. If you are nursing the baby in prone position, the servo control probe should be positioned in the right hypochondrium. However, if you are nursing in prone position, it should be placed in the flank area. Because when a baby was nursed prone and probe was positioned on the abdomen, studies have shown that a falsely high temperature was recorded. It is a good practice to cover probe with a reflective cover pad, foil covered foam adhesive pad, which prevents heating of the probe itself. Check the container level every 4 hourly. Now, once the water is below the minimum water mark, make sure you empty the entire contents and then refill the container. Do not refill in the existing water. And as mentioned, do not use tap water. Condensation inside the incubator should be wiped away with tissue paper. The doors should be opened carefully, and unnecessary opening of doors and portholes should be avoided. Now, you can nurse the infant in an incubator with a cap and nappy only. If we are using high humidity, especially during the first week, the cloths will become damp. However, once the baby doesn't require humidity, he can be well clothed. Sheets should be inspected regularly and changed if they become damp. Skin care should be taken care of and should be inspected regularly to check for integrity or any signs of infection. The newer incubators have weighing scale integrated in the machine itself, and it should be done on a daily basis using the same scale so that unnecessary disturbance can be avoided. Position the baby using roll towels or cloth nappies to provide boundaries that support nesting and flexion of limb but keeping the face clear. The concept of family-centered care must be kept in mind, and the caregivers and parents must be explained the purpose of incubator for their baby. Ensure they are familiar with how to assess the baby, as it is optimal for parents to continue to touch and provide comfort. Do not make much sound, speak slowly, ensure that the volume of the alarms is not too high. Do not place any item or electrical equipment on the top of the incubator. It can be very noisy and causes undue stress for the infant. Noise created outside the incubator is amplified greatly inside the incubator. Now, this is the incubator cover. Now, care should be taken while placing the cover. Obviously, the benefit is that it minimizes light to the infant. However, the gray side is that it may also reduce the visibility and reduce the day-night effect. So what we have shown here is that one wall of the incubator has not been covered with the cover. So this will ensure that the nurse or the caregiver is able to assess the infant condition at all times and side by side minimize light to the infant. Some special situations like doing procedure in an incubator. The procedure should be done by trained and expert personnel to ensure minimal handling and reducing procedure. We should always switch to air mode while doing procedure. The newer incubators have air boost mode. They create a strong blanket of air to serve as a barrier against cool air entry when a porthole or door is opened. It can be activated and it should be activated during procedure. When you give phototherapy in incubator, reduce the temperature by 0.5 degree. Once phototherapy is completed, increase by 0.5 degree. If the infant's temperature continues to be more than 37.2, more than that, you should reduce the incubator temperature further by 0.5. And very rarely, infant may need to be transferred into an open cot. These days, we are using LED phototherapy units, so the problem of overheating is almost disappeared. As mentioned earlier, KMC should be promoted as per the unit protocol, even when the baby is being nursed in an incubator. In our unit, to minimize handling of the babies, we prefer to give 3 hourly feeding instead of 2 hourly feeding. Now, sometimes we see alarms like high temperature alarm, so we confirm by the baby's auxiliary temperature. If the baby's temperature is high, check the heater output. If the heater output is high, close to 100%, and the baby is in air mode, set the temperature at an appropriate level. And if it is in the skin mode, check whether the skin probe is placed correctly. However, if the baby's temperature is high and the heater output appears low, in that case, baby might be having fever, and any fever in a newborn has to be treated aggressively and investigated accordingly. Similarly, for low temperature alarm, check whether the incubator is working, check for the heater output, change or repair incubator is required, and if everything is fine and still the baby is not able to maintain the temperature, then he might be able, it's possible that he is unwell and needs further workup. Caps, socks and mittens can be used if required. In the end, any NICU is totally incomplete without the concept of developmental supportive care. An incubator provides an ample opportunity to prevent the babies from inadvertent sound, light, and provides adequate temperature. So families must be involved. They should be taught how to handle the babies. In the initial part, they have various anxieties, and which should be allayed by sitting with them and counseling them. The baby should be well nested, well positioned. The nursing staff should be well aware how to handle the baby. Nutrition should be optimized, and stress and pain should be minimized. Bundled care approach should be followed. With this, I end my presentation. And now we have prepared 2 tutorial videos. The first video shall cover regarding how to use an incubator and demonstrate practically how to set temperature and other things and humidity. And the second video shall cover how to disinfect an incubator. Thank you.
This video, we are going to learn about how to use an incubator in the care of a preterm baby in NICU. So first, let's learn about the parts of the incubator. This is a canopy or a hood. This is a storage drawer to keep the baby's essentials. This is a bed height pedal to increase or decrease the height of the incubator. This is an examination light, a tubing grommet to insert the ventilator and oxygen tubings. This is an elbow-operated iris port which should be opened slowly to avoid noise to the baby, through which nursing care and handling of the baby can be done. We can't see the video released from the door. This is usually opened during procedures such as intubation or line insertion. This is an infant bed which can be tilted to raise the head end of the bed. The bed can be slided out for any procedure such as intubation or IV line insertion. This is an X-ray tray. This is the humidifier chamber or the water reservoir showing the maximum and the minimum lines, which lies the bacterial filter. Now coming to the control panel showing various functions of the incubator. This is the air boost button which is usually pressed during any procedures in order to avoid hypothermia and decrease in humidity level. This is the humidity button to set the humidity. This is the scale button which is used to measure the weight of the baby, which can be measured in the incubator itself. temperature of the baby, which currently is 37.3 degrees Celsius. This is the set skin temperature of the baby, which is 36.4 degrees Celsius. And this is the air temperature of the incubator, which is currently 36.8 degrees Celsius. So the temperature of the baby is maintained by two different modes. One is air mode or the skin mode. The air mode is set whenever the new baby comes to the NICU after birth or during any procedures. So in air mode, we set the temperature of the air as per the thermometer charts. For example, if the gestation age of the baby is 30 weeks, on post-natal age of day 1, and weight is 1000 grams, so the thermometer temperature required to maintain the baby temperature is 36.3. So we set the air temperature to 36.3 degrees Celsius. Now, the incubator will adjust its heater output in order to maintain the air temperature to 36.3 degrees Celsius. At the same time, we also set the humidity to 80% as it is an extreme premature baby on day 1 of life. This is maintained for the initial 1 week, after which it is gradually decreased to 40% by 5% daily, after which it is stopped. Once the baby maintains temperature on air mode on admission, we can change the mode to skin mode or baby mode. Here the skin temperature is set to 36.5 degrees Celsius. Now the incubator adjusts its heater output so as to maintain the skin temperature to 36.5 degrees Celsius.
In this video, we shall demonstrate cleaning and disinfection of the incubator. This is the incubator cover that should be sent to laundry every weekly. Whenever the equipment is in use, all approachable internal and external surfaces should be cleaned daily with tissue paper soaked in soap and water. Cleaning is done every weekly if humidity is more than 75% or twice weekly if humidity is less than 75%. Incubator should be moved to a work area where there is adequate space for cleaning. Allow the device to cool 30 minutes prior to disinfection. PPE should be worn as per clinical protocol. Obtain all the articles and solutions needed for cleaning before. A trained personnel should disassemble all the layers of the bed. Here we can see removal of side wall of incubator. Smaller parts like tubing management grommet, porthole grommet should be removed and sold separately. Now once we have disassembled all the parts, each part is first cleaned with soap and water. Then it is allowed to dry. After that, each part should be cleaned with 0.5% sodium hypochlorite solution. It can be prepared by adding 50 ml of commercially available 10% hypochlorite solution to 950 ml water. It should be air dried for 30 minutes to 45 minutes prior to next use. At the end, we are showing the humidification chamber whose water needs to be replaced on a daily basis. This chamber should be sent to ETO or alternate week. Now once the chamber is removed, a screw is seen below which lies the filter, which should be examined and replaced if needed. Lastly, date of cleaning should be labeled on the incubator. If we follow a good disinfection protocol, sepsis can be largely prevented. Thank you.
We are live now for the Q&A session. All can go ahead.
So thank you so much for the wonderful and the educative session. So we have received numerous questions, doctors, and I am taking them one by one, and probably you can choose, pick and choose who wants to answer this amongst yourself. The first question is from Dhanalakshmi, Reader, Apollo College of Nursing, Chennai. How to maintain warmth and humidification? Are any standardized tools available to assess the adequacy of warmth and humidification?
I didn't understand the question. What is the question? How to maintain?
I am repeating it, sir. How to maintain the warmth and humidification? Are there any standardized tools available to assess the adequacy of warmth and humidification in an incubator?
Okay, so The warmth is measured by in the incubators. There are the warmth or the temperature of warmer incubator as well as the baby's temperature is displayed on the display board. So that's a measure to assess the temperature of baby as well as the temperature of incubator. And in fact, humidity is also displayed on the display board. So whatever humidity you are setting, whether that much of the humidity is delivered or not is displayed on the display board. So that's a measure to assess the humidity. That's by incubator. Now, if you want to assess it independently, there are hygrometers available by which you can monitor or measure the humidity, and obviously the digital thermometer is available by which you can take the temperature via XLR to assess whether the incubator is displaying the temperature rightly or not. So, is that the question, Devendra?
I think it's fairly answered, sir. Thank you so much. The second question which we have received is this, that how often do we need to check the vitals when we should change the to incubator?
Yeah. So, Jyoti, would you like to answer that question?
So the vitals again are displayed on the monitor itself. Okay, so most of the time the vitals are displayed, but whenever you are handling the baby every 3 hourly with the feeding, at that time you can just assess the baby, like you can see the abdomen. But otherwise, most of the vitals like heart rate, saturation, they are continuously on monitor purpose. So our main purpose is when a baby is on incubator, you don't need to handle the baby again and again. You should do minimal handling. So most of the vitals are on the monitor, and only 3 hourly when you check the baby. So that time you can do all the care at the same time. Like you can feed the baby, you can do suction if you want, you can check the nappy of the baby. And at the same time, you can check for abdomen or the other things which you cannot see on the monitor.
In fact, many a times we have discussed the same aspect on our daily rounds, that whenever you go to examine a baby, have in your mind what exactly do you want to examine. Because as ma'am mentioned, most of the things are being displayed on this.
Saturation, they are continuously on monitor purpose. Our main purpose is when a baby is.
So we should be very, very clear what we want to examine, and minimal and minimum handling should be done.
Yeah, so that's rightly said by Jyoti and Rohit. And one thing is also we need to keep in our mind whenever we are keeping a baby fresh into the incubator. So whenever on admission, when you are keeping a baby in the incubator and baby's admission temperature is low, so baby is being warmed rapidly. At that time, there are chances that rapid rewarming can lead to tachycardia or low blood pressure. So at that time, you need to be vigilant. In first half hour or 1 hour, we need to see, though it is displayed on the monitor, but that should be monitored strictly in first hour of the keeping the baby in the incubator.
Thank you, sir. So the third question which we have received is, can we apply any moisture on the baby's skin to protect water loss?
So, Jyoti, you want to answer? So anybody want to answer? Rohit?
So basically, the purpose of humidity is like a moisturizer only. So if the baby needs high humidity, you can increase the humidity, as it was mentioned in the previous presentation. We can even go up to 85 to 90%. If we use a good humidity, then usually moisturizer and emollients are not required.
Sure, sir. I think this answers the question very well. There is another question. What is the most detrimental effect of hypothermia in ELW babies?
Yes.
Should I repeat?
Yeah. So Jyoti, you want to answer that question?
So the hypothermia itself is one of the biggest risk factor which increases the mortality in the babies. So as we know, with every 1 degree fall in hypothermia, the mortality is increased almost by 16%. So with hypothermia in ELBW babies, it increases the mortality, it increases the chances of sepsis, it And short-term things like it increases metabolic acidosis, it can lead to hypoglycemia, it can lead to increased oxygen consumption. So it affects in all this. The most important is it overall affects the mortality itself. So temperature maintenance is very important for ELBW babies.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. So the next question is, I think it's from Mumbai. At places near coastal areas like Mumbai, is it necessary to set humidity control and incubator? As since most of these places has higher humidity level, approximately 50% in the environment, most of these places incubators are used without setting up humidity. Kindly advise.
So I'll take this out. So even if your environment humidity is 40 or 50%, but we have seen that ELBW babies, they require very high humidity of 80%. So you need to set up that humidity incubator. Environment humidity would not really matter in that case because 50% is still very low for the babies. So you have to set up the incubator humidity, and very preterm babies, you might even require up to 90% sometimes.
And secondly,
The
it is
environmental situation is actually, so you want to add, Rohit?
Sir, just 2 points. It is incubator is a closed care system, and what here we are discussing is about the micro environment and not the ambient environment. So the micro environment has to be precise, irrespective of the ambient environment.
Yeah, and say in the Rajasthan, the temperature in summers goes in fact up till 47 and 48 degrees centigrade. Even when the environmental temperature is 47 to 48, we receive almost 25% of these babies in hypothermic condition at admission. So the environmental these babies or babies who are especially less than 1500 grams have a very high temperature and humidity requirement. And despite, as Dr. Jyoti and Dr. Rohit has mentioned, despite being the humid atmosphere or a warm atmosphere, their need for a high humidity and high temperature is very high. And thus, they need a microenvironment which is precise and which is quite humid. So they sometimes babies who are less than 1000 grams sometimes needs almost 85 to 90% of humidity during first week of life. So to prevent insensible water loss, and otherwise, what we witness when these babies are nurtured in the warmer is that they lose almost 3 to 4% of their weight on a daily basis. In a week, they loses almost 20% of the weight just by insensible water loss. And when you try to replenish that or compensate that with intravascular with the IV fluid, it leads to opening up of PD, and it actually opens up a cascade in which you give fluid to compensate the insensible water loss or dehydration, and that leads to opening up of PD, and then you restrict fluid, and that leads to ARF. So the baby actually enters into a whirlwind. So we need to prevent the insensible water loss by maintaining a high humidity, especially in babies who are less than 1000 grams. There's no other meaning by which we can prevent them. We need to have a humidified atmosphere for that kind of babies.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you so much for the explanation. The next question is this, that how do we reconfirm that incubator is totally disinfected once disinfection process is carried out? Is there any ways to reconfirm that?
Rohit, you have to cover the disinfection process.
Yes, surveillance is the answer, I think. You can send cultures from the humidification chamber. You can inspect the filter frequently, and you should ensure that it is all the disinfectant protocols you have set are being exactly followed. The infection control nurse should be taken in, and surveillance cultures, I think, plays a vital role.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So there is a small question again. Is there any thumb rule to set humidification level in an incubator?
Jyoti, you.
So as I have told, there are no standard guidelines. So most of the units are following their unit protocols. So the thumb rule is, you remember, when if the baby is less than 28 weeks, you need to start with at least 80%. But when the baby is less than 26 weeks, sometimes we start with even a higher humidity of 85 to 90%. But when the baby is more than 28 weeks, we start with the humidity of around 70 to 75%, and sometimes even 80%. Again, I told you it depends upon the clinical condition. You start with humidity and you see if the baby is maintaining temperature on that. Okay, and then we gradually wean it. In less than 28 weeks, you will not wean until 1 week, but in more than 28 weeks, you can consider weaning even after 2 to 3 days of. So there is no thumb rule as such, but this is on the basis of available evidence. This is what most of the units have been following. Start with 80% or less than 80%, hook on whether the baby is less than 28 or more than 28.
Thank you, ma'am.
And then
So the next,
wean after 1 week 5% on a daily basis in babies who are.
can I go ahead with the next question?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So the next question is, like you add 10 ml per kg of water loss during phototherapy when the baby is in open care under a radiant warmer. Do you have the same when the baby is under incubator?
So as such, earlier when we used to add 10 ml per kg of radiant warmer, 10 ml per kg of phototherapy and so on, I think the better way is to assess the hydration on a 12-hourly basis, because these babies can have water loss in a different way. So you cannot generalize the rule that 10 ml per kg is the water loss for every baby who is under warmer. So we need to assess the hydration after every 12 hours. These babies who are less than 1200 grams needs almost a daily monitoring of weight, 12-hourly monitoring of urine output, if needed, a daily monitoring of sodium, bicarb and lactate, and thus you titrate the weight as per their titrate the fluid as per their weight loss and as per their sodium. So a thumb rule or a generalization that 10 ml per kg should be added for warmer is not a right policy. We start them on a probably 80 ml per kg, 70 to 80 ml per kg, and then we titrate the fluid based on these parameters. So weight, urine output, sodium, whether the duct is open or not, are the ways by which we increase or decrease the fluids. But definitely a baby in the incubator will need less fluid than the baby who is under radiant warmer.
Sure, sir. So this is a very common question. There is sometimes this happens in NICU. We place some items over the canopy with force or a bang over the canopy. Does the noise generated inside, does this noise gets generated inside the incubator? Is it serious enough to cause discomfort or harm to the baby?
Yes, I think I mentioned in my presentation, the incubator basically amplifies the sound to a large amount. So this practice should be completely avoided. Basically, it should be a spinal reflex that not to place anything on the incubator, because even a marginal increase in sound can be detrimental for the extreme preemie babies.
Yeah, we can go for the next question now. What are your views on using plastic wraps enclosing warmer against an incubator for preterm?
So when a baby is in the incubator, we do not use plastic wrap, because then sometimes we have seen that these the chances of burns are there. Because if you have a baby wrapped in the plastic and then in the incubator, the heat is entrapped into the plastic wrap, and baby can be overheated by that. Obviously, if you are using a radiant warmer and you do not have an incubator, you need additional measures to maintain their temperature and prevent heat loss, and keeping these babies in the plastic wrap, or covering the incubator panels with the plastic wrap is a routine method. And there are 1 or 2 studies from Bangladesh and I suppose one from India as well, which has shown that these babies whose warmer is covered with the plastic wrap, food grade plastic wrap, loses less weight and less water. So that can be one modality, indigenous modality, to prevent excessive water loss in these babies, provided they are on the radiant warmer. But in the incubator, they should not be covered with plastic wraps because then the chances of hyperthermia is there.
Thank you, sir. So, third last question now. Is there any NNF guideline for using incubator based on weight and gestational age? Should I repeat my question?
No, Dr. Jyoti, you want to answer?
So there is no as guidelines as such from NNF as far as I know. But again, this differs from unit to unit, and some people say you can even nurse a baby who is less than 1800 grams or less than 34 weeks. Okay, in that case, you might not need to add humidity, but even less than 1800 grams also some babies are nursing in incubators. Some units follow the protocol of less than 1500 grams. And in the West, some people even follow the protocol of less than 1250 grams. So that varies from unit to unit. As far as I know, NNF is not having any such criteria. In our unit, we are following less than 32 weeks and less than 1500 grams babies nursing in incubators.
Yeah, so NNF has not come up with any kind of guidelines that these babies should be nursed in the incubator, because as we all know, ours is a resource poor country and we cannot have incubator at every place. Once you put a guideline that babies who are less than 1200 grams should be put in the incubator, it becomes a moral and legal binding on the units. But obviously, the evidence suggests that these babies, when they are nursed in the incubator, they loses less insensible water, and their oxygen need is obviously lesser than babies who are in the radiant warmer. And practically also we have seen that it is obviously better, the survival looks better, though the Cochrane has shown that there is no difference in the survival between warmer and incubator. But if you look in the West, I do not think that any unit in the West is keeping babies less than 1500 grams in a radiant warmer. So it's basically the availability and the affordability which plays a major role in keeping these babies in the incubator.
Thank you, sir. The next question is dual temperature monitoring, that is monitoring at two different locations inside the canopy, having any clinical benefits? If yes, how?
As far as I know, I think there is no need to do dual monitoring. If you're keeping the baby supine, you can do monitoring at the right hypochondrium area, and if you're keeping the baby prone, you can do it at flank area. Otherwise, I don't think any clinical benefit. Maybe sir can reflect.
So dual temperature monitoring means two site temperature measurement of the baby or in the incubator, of the incubator.
So I can just repeat the question. Dual temperature monitoring, that is monitoring at two different locations. I think inside the canopy they are asking. Does it have any clinical benefits and how?
I mean, as Rohit has emphasized, probably the audience wants to ask whether if we are monitoring the temperature at two different sites in the incubator, does it have any added advantage?
So maybe you can explain it both on the baby as well as on the location. The clinical view would be helping all the others.
So one, if we are monitoring on the baby, so if you want to monitor the baby's temperature at two different locations, which means one at right hypochondrium and another at feet or any kind of peripheral area, obviously a difference between central and peripheral temperature of more than 0.5 degrees centigrade is an early marker of septicemia, and clinical studies have shown that if there is a temperature difference more than 0.5 degrees centigrade between hypochondrium and feet temperature, you should act early. So if you can monitor, it is obviously a useful guidance to monitor for babies who are at risk for neonatal sepsis and shock. But when you are applying two probes, obviously there are skin burns and you make a tight control of temperature. So it might be beneficial in the earlier portion of the care But later on, when the baby is mature enough and growing, actually we want to keep the baby on air mode so that there are some amount of fluctuation in the temperature which baby control on his own. So that it is basically it's a transition from incubator to radiant warmer or mother's lab. When you are monitoring two temperature in an incubator, you just want to make sure that the temperature is uniform into the incubator. I mean, that's basically incubator's technology. So probably that is not needed, I suppose, if the incubator is good enough and if the incubator is of good quality, it will give a uniform temperature in the canopy. Next, David.
Sure, sir. Thank you for clearly demarcating. Last question, sir. Isn't it a good practice to use ear muffs or plugs to the baby to avoid noise included, damage or stress?
Jyoti, you want to?
We are not using and we are not doing any such practice of using ear cuffs or this thing. In West, there people have been using it, but I think more important is if we can avoid noise, like closing the incubator doors slowly, not putting anything on the canopy itself. I think that itself would be more beneficial, because I think when we are putting an extra muff or a earplug, it could also be a source of infection, and this could be uncomfortable for the baby sometimes. And sometimes the normal sounds which baby should be getting, like when we say the mother's sound and the soothing things, that is avoided. So I don't think that is a usual practice that should be done.
It's basically a package of developmentally supportive care. So you want to control the noises, control the lights, external lights, control the external disturbances. And as Jyoti has emphasized, there are different other meanings of controlling the external noise and light sources. So covering the baby's incubator with a cloth, thick cloth, so that noise is not transferred into the incubator. Not keeping anything above the incubator so that it doesn't vibrate are some of the ways. People have tried putting ear muffs. People have tried playing soft music. People have tried playing mother's lullaby in the mother's voice in the incubator and experimented, but obviously they are not so far. They are not hard evidences supporting them. But obviously there are different meanings to provide a developmentally supportive care, and if they can be there are no harm. You may try.
Thank you, sir. That answers well. So we have almost taken all the major questions. There are a few more questions which we can share with you over email, and you can answer that, and probably we can send it to the participants who are there in the webinar. So I take this opportunity again to thank all the panel experts for sharing such clear views on the webinar and the topics. I thank all of you for attending our webinar. We hope you have enjoyed it. If your question wasn't answered during the live event, we will plan back to get back to you in next 1 or 2 days of time. Until then, please keep safe. Thank you so much, sir.